Welcome to episode 3 of the Broad Street Phanatics. I am here with Cameron as my co-host, and I am also here with a special guest, Devin Hastie from Canada, and he is here to talk about the Blue Jays series this past weekend against the Philadelphia Phillies, and we will also get into the next series with the Phillies and Marlins, as well as Boston later in the week. And then lastly, we will get into the Stanley Cup Playoffs, talking about yesterday's action. So welcome, Devin.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Thanks for having me, Cameron. Excited to be
Yeah,
here.
no problem. No problem. We're excited to have you. So, Alex, go ahead. I think you have
Okay.
to bench a question, I believe.
Okay, so Devin, I definitely wanted your take on the series this past weekend on the Phillies and Blue Jays.
Yeah, that's it was a good series for the Jays, I think, Alex. But I think as a Philly fan, I guess when you're Phillies fans in the NL East, you get a chance to see the AL East. The one thing that you did get to see out of the Blue Jays was three different personalities. Kind of game 1, game 2, and game 3. They were that's how they've played this year. If you get my drift.
Yeah.
That game 1 was kind of typical Jays, where the Phillies pitching was Velasquez was really, really good, shut the bats down, and they just had nothing going. That's kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, I jotted down some notes, and it says he pitched 5.2 innings, gave up 1 earned run, 3 walks, and pitched 7 strikeouts.
Yeah, that's I think that's the stat line you'll see a lot in a lot of the Jays' losses is limited hits. I think he only gave up 1 hit, and the walks. I guess they'll take their walks, but they don't hit. They don't hit. So
I think the big problem of the Jays' offense over the weekend was Vladimir. He was a beast in the box, and the Phillies couldn't stop him.
Now, you guys would be too young to remember his dad, but when he gets swinging that bat, he sure does look like Vladdy Sr., doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Vladdy's been...
We've heard about his dad. About his dad.
You've probably heard about him, Cam? And Vladdy's a beast, and I think the one thing that you'll see with him is, last year and, the September call-up the year before, he struggled a little bit with big league pitching. But he admittedly came into camp last year overweight, and he really, if you see the transformation, he lost over 40 pounds this past winter. Played some winter ball down in Mexico, and came into camp in shape. And you're starting to see what everybody was talking about when they signed him as a 16-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
His exit velocities are like nothing else, and there aren't too many MLBers that hit the ball as hard as Vladdy does.
Did he play college ball?
No, he was an international free agent. That there's some good stories about him where Alex Anthopoulos, who's now the GM of the Braves, Anthopoulos went deep into the Dominican when Vladdy was a 16-year-old, and they recruited him, and they signed him at 16.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So, but you can see there's a lot, and there's you think about the old baseball names. Guerrero is one of them, but I think you got a really vintage look at Dante Bichette's young lad, Bo, this weekend too. He was a game breaker in a couple of the games too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the Phillies' big issues this season, at least, is they need to stay healthy. They started off well, and then they started getting Bryce went down, JT went down. I think there was a time there where Reese was down. They were all down at some point, and they all came back, and now they're starting to get hurt again. So I think the Phillies need to work on staying healthy and adding people not to the lineup right immediately and giving them their time so they don't risk more of an injury.
Well, I think that's a good point, Cameron, because if you look at that Phillies lineup, you take Real Muto and Harper out of it, and it gets short pretty quick,
Mhm.
right? Like Herrera, like I'm a big Herrera fan. Every time I play MLB, I end up trading for him because of his versatility. But when he's your starting center fielder and you got to put Kingery in right, like that's not their strongest lineup they can put on the field.
Yeah.
Actually, I do like the Nick Maitan edition.
Yeah, he broke out there in Game 3, didn't he?
Yeah,
That was a bit of his coming out party.
he's been getting contact on the ball a lot, which I like.
Came into the series. I think what was a tough series for him is the strength of the Blue Jays, like left-handed starting staff. But was really good for Matan was to see him, like he hit both his home runs came off left-handers. He, I think he lit up Ray for one, and then was it Meza or was it Bergen out of the pen that he got his second one off? And so cool to see the left-handed bat hit and left-handed pitching.
Yeah, me too. So
I came up with a question. How impressed or not impressed have you been with the Blue Jays this season so far?
Cam, that's a good question because I think the Jays came into this season with expectations, right? And you look at the AL East, and that was kind of ripe for the pickings. Tampa Bay looks like they might not be as strong, and New York. I've always been iffy on New York. They got the big bats, and they've got a little bit of pitching, so you kind of expected the Jays to come out of the gate and kind of run it. But then Boston came out hot. I guess we'll talk about Boston a little bit. Wouldn't mind seeing the Phillies beat up on them a little later this week. Let the Jays close some ground. And the Jays came out a little slow. And I think you get frustrated. But then I was just checking it out today, and there's only 2 teams in the big leagues that have lost that have lost less games than the Jays. So, and they beat up on good teams. Like they go into Oakland, and they've gone into Houston, and they've gone into Atlanta and been pretty successful. So I think net you have to balance. The Jays have been pretty good so far, but then too, I think you talked about the Phillies not being healthy. The Jays haven't been healthy at any point. Like Springer really has played one series, and with Springer in that lineup, he's going to lengthen it. And then I was just looking at the Blue Jays bullpen, which has been the best in baseball. And they've got 4 high leverage guys that have pitched this year on the DL, 2 of them on the 60-day. The Merriweather kid throwing 100+ heat against the Yankees came out of nowhere. And then Kirby Yates, who was signed to be their closer, hasn't even is getting Tommy John. He hasn't even pitched for them. So I think there's kind of a balance between they're achieving what we would hope to stay tight to the Sox, but actually expected them to be out in front of the division earlier than being in second place now.
So moving on to later in the week, starting tomorrow, the Phillies they start a series against the Miami Marlins in Philadelphia. And it looks like Zach Wheeler will be the starter. And still not sure about the starter for Miami. It says to be determined. What are your thoughts on tomorrow night's game and the rest of the series?
Cameron, we're going to have to hear from you on that one. I'm not as well versed in the National League East.
Yeah, I think the Phillies can do it. I think, correct me if I'm wrong now, but the Marlins haven't come out really hot, so I think they can do it. I think, they're very young, but I think they'll be able to. I think the Phillies will be able to hopefully pull their way through.
Actually, now looking at their schedule, they are coming off a win against the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm. The Dodgers have been slumpy. The Dodgers started off really hot out of the gate, and then they lost 5 straight series, I think. So I think
looking at the standings in the West, the Dodgers are two games behind San Diego.
Yeah,
San Francisco's been really good in the West this year too. So I think they're not having as easy of a push as they thought they were. They came out of the gate hot, but then they've struggled of late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think let me see who's pitching Wednesday. Oh, Wednesday is Zach Eflin against Rogers.
I like
Rogers is
when
a good young starter. Like I think he's a kid
Yeah.
who's just needs to get his MLB legs under him, but he's been pretty good for them, I think, so far.
Trevor Rogers, his ERA is 1.84.
That's legit.
Yeah.
Anything under 4 nowadays in the big leagues is good, right? And his whip is 107 whip. So I think the one challenge for the Phillies with a guy like Rogers is just going to be cutting down their strikeouts. That's one thing I saw a lot. That's why I thought they were similar to the Jays, just the amount they strike out in a baseball game.
What's his best pitch? Is it like a changeup, fastball?
I'm gonna guess he's a changeup guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess he's a changeup guy, Alex. Seems to be, cutter, fastball, changeup seems to be what a lot of guys are doing nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
All right, are we?
Yeah. Just one more game. The series finale against Miami. Vince Velasquez is pitching. On Thursday against Alcantara.
Old Sergei Alcantara. He's another one of those.
Yeah.
He's got a live arm.
Yeah.
But I was away on vacation the weekend and I wasn't able to watch the Phillies. But if I'm hearing correctly, Vince Velasquez looked good on Friday. So if he comes out and looking good again on Thursday, I think we'll be set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if he can throw anything like he did against the Jays on Friday night, they'll be set up. He was spectacular. I think what's good about that, though, is Velasquez had he's competing for that rotation start, right? Like if I understand correctly, he didn't start the year in the rotation, and he ended up taking Moore's spot. So a little bit of competition for a guy like that isn't bad.
Exactly right.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to the Red Sox series, what are your takes, Devin, on that series, and do you see the Phillies winning that series in any way?
Is it in Boston or in Philadelphia, Alex?
It is at Philly.
It's at Philly. I think that helps. I think it being in Philly will give the Phils a little bit of an advantage. The one thing, though, there's one thing is like the Bo Sox pitching has been pitching above where they're supposed to be, right? So if you think about the potency of that Phillies lineup, I think if they can catch up, they have the ability to be that team that kind of breaks the pitching bubble for the Bo Sox. And then, but the challenge, I think, with the Bo Sox, and especially when they're in that little bandbox in Boston, is they're going to hit, right? Like you think about how long the Jays line up. And I was texting with Alex this weekend, and when you've got Lourdes Gurriel and Rowdy Tellis hitting 7th and 8th, it's pretty tough on a pitcher. But then if you turn around and look at Boston and you look at the length of their lineup, is they've got really good hitters hitting deep into their lineup, which can make it really tough on a pitcher.
I think one big thing is that the Phillies bullpen has to stay consistent and not blow any leads or anything, because the Phillies bullpen has been atrocious a couple games this year, and I think as I don't know, it's kind of hard to put in words of what the bullpen is really is, but I feel like that they have Hector Neris. He's been doing a lot better than last year, I feel like. And they also have Alvarado and Connor Brogdon. And I think those are the three main ones.
Yeah, Brogdon, I thought he's a big lanky kid. I thought he pitched well when he came in against the Jays there, at least I think Friday night to snuff it out a little bit. And that's where Boston's going to get you, right? Like Boston's going to take a lot of pitches. Boston's going to try and get those starters' pitch counts up quick. That's where the Jays have been strong when they can get, 20, 25 pitches out of a starter in the first inning. That when the Dodgers were winning, that's what they were doing. They were making starters go 25, 30 pitches deep in a first inning. Is if you get into that where your starters are getting into 25 pitches in the first inning, they're going to have some trouble with Boston. But then you look at Boston's pitching. We got like Sales on the 60-day DL. So, really, Eovaldi might be the biggest name coming at you. Canadian Nick Pavetta's there. He's a guy I think the Phillies bats can get to, especially with the left-handed sticks.
Former Philly Nick Pavetta.
Former Philly. I forgot about that. So you guys know Pavetta well.
Former Philly Nick Pavetta, yes.
Just looking at the starters for Friday, it is Martin Perez starting.
So left-hander. And it looked like the Jays left-handers gave the Phillies bats a little bit of fits. Like even Anthony Kay, who hasn't been good this year, really shut them down. So that might be tough. And then is Eduardo Rodriguez throwing it all in the series? Because he's
Saturday is Nathan Eovaldi.
Now the right-hander, so that's good for the Phils. And then Sunday, Richards or Pavetta?
Sunday is Eduardo Rodriguez.
Left-hander. So they're going lefty, righty, lefty. So it'll be a tough series, Cameron. I think the Phils, if they get one of three, they'd be good. But if they could beat one of the left-handers and get out of there with a two of three, they'd be in good hands.
Yeah.
I guess it'll all depend. Is Harper healthy, or what happened with him?
Oh, speaking of that, what do you think about the controversy of Gene Segura and Joe Girardi in the dugout?
I didn't see it, to be honest. I didn't pay any attention. I guess I was watching the Canadian feed, so they didn't pick up on it as good. But I think Segura had a rough series, to be honest.
Actually, I was watching the post-game show, and they had Girardi live at the press conference, and he totally went off. And he did not accept any questions from the media regarding that situation.
Interesting. And you'll see that, right? I think if you think about big league ball players and Girardi having been a player, they're competitive guys, right? And those things happen over the course of 162 games, and guys get angry with each other. They're pros. They'll get over it. Segura's going to have a spot in the lineup, right? Like, I mean, the Phils aren't healthy enough for him to come out right now anyways. And from what I heard, he's been pretty good all year. He's a tough out. He's a tough guy to get out. That's for sure.
Yeah. So
can we go back to the J? What about Bryce Harper laying down a bunt, guys? How did that feel in Philly land?
I forget what inning that was.
That was, we came in to pinch hit and they had runners at first and second. It was late in that game, the comeback game where they almost came back, and they had Harper. I kind of figured that maybe he just couldn't swing it back because of his shoulder, but in the ninth, he had a couple good hacks at a couple balls to close the game out anyways.
Yeah, I felt like he did have a great chance of smacking one in the ninth inning.
He had a good cut.
I think it was an 0-2 count.
Yeah, took a big swing, fouled it off.
He took like a 95 mile per hour fastball.
Yeah.
That he looked like he was about to crush it.
Yeah, he swung like there was nothing wrong with his shoulder there. I thought it was a little strange that Harper was in the game laying down a bunt.
Yeah, you don't usually see that from your big bat.
No, not especially in a game where you're just trying to close the gap. I think it was they were down by 3 or 4 at the time, right? So it's interesting. Yeah, it'd be nice though. I'll be rooting for the Phils this weekend when they take on the Bo Sox. Hopefully they can take 2 or 3 from the Sox.
So moving on. So this is going to be the first time that we move on from Philadelphia sports for a couple minutes, and we are going to cover last night's Stanley Cup playoff action, which was a pretty pretty decent
It
night.
was a very, very decent night.
Yeah.
And I want to get your thoughts on this, Devin. I feel like there's only been one game I think that didn't go into overtime. Do you like overtime? Do you want it to get over with? What are your thoughts on overtime?
It's the NHL playoffs. I think, as a Canadian kid, and I know Philadelphia is a great hockey town, but as a Canadian kid, as you grow up playing street hockey,
Mhm.
and every kid imagines, tie game, overtime. I'm shooting pucks on or shooting tennis balls at my brother playing goal, and setting the scenario that it's the Stanley Cup playoffs in overtime, and I put one over his glove or through the 5 hole to win the game. And generally it's game 7 too. So yeah, you got to love the intensity that comes with overtime, and one shot wins, right? Next shot wins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely love it, and I think this playoff has been the most competitive, at least that I've seen so far in
The,
years.
the first round, Cam, it's a good, like the first round generally is. And if you see like the way that the playoff matchups have worked in the past, with 1 versus 8, but I think it's super compelling when you see this, the first 2 rounds being division. I think that just amps it up even more. I was watching a little bit of Boston, Washington, the second game before, and even Saturday night is those two teams, like they hate each other. Like
Mhm.
Mhm.
it's a different level to the game.
Yeah.
I was actually watching the Predators game before.
I was just gonna say I have a feeling both of these tonight are gonna go into overtime too because Boston and Pittsburgh are tied at 2-2 in the second intermission, and Nashville just scored a goal
You
30
mean
seconds.
I think you meant to say Boston and Capitals.
Boston Capitals.
Yeah.
That's what I meant to say. And then Nashville just tied it up with Carolina, and now it's 2-2 in both games right now.
Hmm.
They have about 10 minutes to go in the second period. So we have a fun night of hockey in for us, I think.
Well, I think they're going to have a fun. What's going to be interesting about this first round, if it's anything like it started, is there's more scoring. If you
Hmm.
would have told me that the Islanders were going to win a 4-3 hockey game in the playoffs, I would have told you you're crazy,
Hmm.
right? And I think that just goes to show that, for the Islanders is going out and getting a guy like Palmieri who could put the puck in the net. And even though he didn't
Hmm.
have a great finish of the season with them, I think, he got, 2 goals there the other night.
Yeah,
Tied his output
including the
for,
game winner.
tied his
He got the
output
game winner.
for the since the trade deadline. So
Yeah.
really
Hmm.
interesting. If you would have said, Pittsburgh and the Islanders was 4-3, I would have told you all day Pittsburgh wins that hockey game. Right?
So, do you think that Pittsburgh will win that series?
I don't actually. I think that it depends. So I should take a step back. As if Varlamov doesn't get healthy, I think Pittsburgh has a shot at taking that in 6. But again, they proved us wrong last night because the Islanders found ways to score goals. But again, too, is whether Varlamov's out, you add Malkin back into that Pittsburgh lineup, it gets a little bit deeper, and I think
Hmm.
it's going to be a hard series for the Islanders to win if they don't have their number one goalie.
Yeah. Here's my question: Who do you think is the most? Who do you think has the most best chance to win the Stanley Cup this year? Who do you think the most dangerous team or most underrated team in the playoffs are?
So should I vote with my head here, Cam, or should I vote with my heart?
Uh, I guess vote with your head. Vote with your
Okay,
head.
because I gotta say the answer is both. So the I think the right answer is the Carolina Hurricanes. Although as we see tonight, Nashville, who was probably the last team to get in, is giving them all they can handle in game 1. But I think though it's one team that a lot of people that don't know hockey are sleeping on. But they're a good hockey team. But I think the one thing for the U.S. is you probably didn't get to see a lot of the Canadian division this year, but as a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, and this is again, I want to balance my heart. This is the best Toronto Maple Leafs hockey club since 1993. And that year they lost to LA in the conference finals. And I would say the only thing standing between the Leafs and a really good run is Connor McJesus in Edmonton, because he's a guy to shut down for 4 games. It's going to be pretty tough. So I'd say don't sleep on a team coming out of the Canadian division, making a really good push for it this year.
Yeah, I really agree.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it, even if you say Colorado, who's probably the best team right now, right? Carolina or Colorado would be it's a legit Stanley Cup final. Colorado still has to go through St. Louis.
That series starts tonight.
Alex, right?
Yeah.
And although St. Louis is out without their top scorer and David Perron, they still are playoff hardened and they know how to win playoff hockey. And then you win that series and you got to go through the winner of Vegas and Minnesota. And Minnesota showed Vegas there the other night. They're legit. You hold the Vegas Knights to 0.
They held them to 0-0. That was a 1-0 overtime win for the Wild.
And Cam, you know what? Is if Marc-Andre Fleury doesn't stand on his head, Minnesota wins that game going away. Like Fleury made five alarm saves in that game.
Yeah. Alex and I were on a Zoom and I was admiring Marc-Andre Fleury, and I was saying, how old is he? Because he must be getting up there, because I remember him when he was on Pittsburgh in 2013, 2014.
Yeah, Fleury was a part, if I'm correct, of that 2003 or 2004 draft, which was probably one of the best NHL drafts of all time.
Wow.
Right? So he's been, and a lot of those guys, like your Jeff Carter, you'll see, and the hated Penguins was a part of that draft. So Fleury and Carter, they're getting up there, like they're north of 35 years old now, and it's a young man's game. So yeah, so I think it's a tough slide to get through the West. If you look at that, I think if you look at the Central is Florida, the Battle of Florida for the first time ever. It's going to be that. Well, that game was a beauty. If every game,
that was a great game. That was a great game. I watched pretty much the whole game, and I wasn't able to turn it off.
And they're not taking it easy on each other, right?
No.
So that's going to be a war of attrition, and then whoever wins that's going to have to go through Carolina, and then you flip over to the East or the old Atlantic or whatever they're calling it now, and New York and Pittsburgh and Boston and Washington is. Again, you got to go through the winner of those. It's a battle, guys. It's like 2 different seasons. You got to stay healthy. You've got to keep your energy up. Some of these barns have fans, some of them don't. It's gonna be a tough sled. So I honestly think as a team coming through the Canadian division, not that it's going to be easy. I think the Leafs will have their hands full and probably win in 6 against Montreal, and Winnipeg could beat Edmonton because of just pure Connor Hellebuck and goal. But I think that it's going to be. Whoever comes out of the Canadian division might be in a little less beat up than some of the others, and they'll give anybody they get their hands. They'll make them pretty full. So.
Yeah, I'm ready for the ride. It's been a roller coaster of a ride so far, and we're only 2 days into it.
Yeah, only 2 days in, Cam. Well, the other thing I'd say too is that if you look at the 2 highest scoring teams in the NHL this year, coming at like Edmonton and Toronto, and if the playoffs aren't going to be like regular playoffs where it's tight, and you said, a 2-1 overtime game used to be what happened, and now we're talking about 4-3 and 5-4 hockey games. I think if it's going to be open wheel and deal hockey, the teams coming out of the North are going to give everybody all they can handle.
I'll put this out there. I do see Pittsburgh winning tomorrow. I think they come out solid and win that game tomorrow.
And it's home ice too, Alex. Right? I think the age-old adage in either hockey or baseball is it isn't a series until the home team loses. Right? And with Pittsburgh losing the first one in Pittsburgh, you can bet I would put money on Pittsburgh to win Game 2 at home because they can't go into New York down 2-0. They just can't, right?
Yeah. So anything else you want to cover, or?
I think we're good to wrap it up. I think we're good. I think the Stanley Cup Finals are really exciting so far. We're only 2 days into it. That's the thing I think I'm most excited for.
That's good. It's good to hear some Phil. It's going to be tough. The
Mhm.
Flyers had a
Well,
rough season.
The Sixers are the number one seed in the East. I know you're not a big basketball fan, but the Sixers are the number one team in the whole country right now. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that makes up for everything.
that'll give you something that you can hang your hats on, and that East will be competitive as itself. But the Sixers are poised for a long run, and my Raptors weren't as after they had their COVID shutdown, they just never were able to bounce back.
Hmm.
But I know that I always watched the games against Philly, just because Alex always caught my interest, and I wanted the Toronto to beat them. And you got a good basketball club there this year, guys. That's for sure.
If we stay healthy, we do. If we stay healthy, I mean, I think our bench might be able to do it. But if we stay healthy, well, there's no doubt.
And playoff basketball is like playoff hockey, Cam.
Mhm.
It's like it's two different seasons. Is your rotations get shorter, your bench gets shorter,
Yeah.
right? 8 guys in the playoffs and in the NBA, and you can make it.
Mhm.
You don't need to have a 10-man, like you don't have to have a 5-man bench at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's good. All right, lads. Well, thanks for having me. Keep your sticks
Yeah.
on the ice, and I'll be a Philadelphia Phillies fan here for the weekend. And someday I promise to get to Philly to watch a ball game, so I can get one of those nice purple P hats, so I can add it to my collection of Major League Baseball hats in the background here.
All right. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Wrap us up.
Okay. Thank you, Devin, for coming on and talking Phillies baseball and Stanley Cup playoffs. And this is it for episode 3 of the Broad Street Fanatics. See you next time.